Hello, and welcome to another edition of On the Road with Legal Talk Network. This is Russ Jones, and I'm the host for this episode, which is being recorded from the 2021 mid-year meeting of the National Conference of Bar Presidents. Joining me now, I have Karen Korr. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Russ.
Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you work and what do you do?
As you stated, my name is Karen Korr, and I'm a legal marketing consultant for law firms and bar associations. And I've had my own company called Korr Press, Korr spelled like my last name, Korr, for the last 2 years. But prior to that, I spent 11 years serving as the Director of Communications for the San Diego County Bar Association. And I've also been pretty actively involved in the National Association of Bar Executives in this time as well.
That's great. Well, thank you for being here and joining us today. So we're here to discuss the presentation that you made in the opening session of the NCBP meeting, which was titled Making Your Bar Organization Cool, Fresh Ideas for Your Bar Organization to Adopt. Can you tell us generally what that session was about?
Sure. One of the things I love about the bar association world is that bar associations largely don't compete with one another. And so in my experience, at least, we were always stealing ideas or policies from one another. So nobody really had to reinvent the wheel. And so in this presentation, I was highlighting some of the things that I've seen over the last year or two that bar associations are doing that are really new and innovative, or obviously in response to COVID, some really good adjustments for programs the bar associations had previously been putting on before the pandemic.
Can you give us some examples of some of the ideas that you shared with the bar leaders that attended your presentation?
Sure. Yeah, I'll highlight a couple of my favorites. The Colorado and Denver bar associations share one staff, and they have an amazing communications department. And so two of the ideas that I shared were from Colorado and Denver. One was that the cover of their magazine is always photos that are submitted by their members, and they're just beautiful. And the only requirements are that they don't show someone's face and that they are taken somewhere in Colorado. And then the photos are selected by the staff there. And really, it's remarkable. So if you have a chance and you haven't seen their magazine covers, I recommend checking it out. The other thing that Colorado does that's really cool is a podcast called Spilling the Tea. And they've got two of their staff members who are a little bit younger and who are not attorneys, interviewing different people within their legal community. And I age myself when I say this, but the vibe is kind of like when Bill Clinton did the town hall with MTV many years ago. It's a really relaxed and casual conversation, and it's really a different way to look at who the attorneys are in your community. And that brings me to another one of my favorites, which is the More Than a Lawyer campaign that the State Bar of Alabama runs. And that's a social media campaign where their members nominate other members, and they highlight what each member is doing outside of being a lawyer. So one of the examples I shared was a man who was highlighted and talked about how he and his wife had been foster parents for 10 years. And he talked sort of about the process and what that had been like for his family. Another example was a judge in their community who had run a mock trial program and a job share sort of thing. And so it's really a cool way to look at what's going on with their attorneys, and it creates great content for their social media, but also something that they archive on their website. So really, really innovative and a little bit different than what I've seen out there before.
So were there any ideas that were particularly directed to bar organizations operating in the COVID environment?
Yes, thanks, Russ. There were a ton of ideas, and I'm really impressed with how the bars adapted so quickly during the pandemic, especially in the areas that bars are known for connecting members with one another, providing education and resources, and helping out in the community. So one of the ideas that I shared is from the Massachusetts Bar Association, fairly early on in the pandemic, but I believe over the summer, because I know that the weather was good enough for them to do this, they rented out a drive-in movie theater, and their members were invited to attend free of charge. There was popcorn and snacks, and each carload had 2 parking spaces so that they could ensure they had enough room to socially distance. And the event was so popular that they repeated it a few other times during the summer. I also really was drawn to the ideas where bar associations were helping out in their community. So one example that I shared is from the Baton Rouge Bar Association. And they had a kit that taught you sort of how to put together a face mask. And they distributed these kits to anyone in their membership who wanted them. And people would sew these masks for them and then return the masks to the bar association, and they would donate them sort of as needed in the community. And another really impressive initiative that I saw out there was from the California Lawyers Association. And most bars created COVID sections on their websites, but the California Lawyers Association had a really robust COVID resources section and separated into resources for the public, resources for attorneys, updates from the court. And what they did for consumers was really phenomenal. They created a whole series of videos where attorneys were explaining sort of the impact of COVID and court closings and how they would affect different things related to labor employment or family law or sort of some of these common areas of law, and just gave a basic breakdown of what people could expect, what was changing in light of the pandemic, and where they could get information. So really, really amazing community resource. And another community resource I really, really appreciate is a project that was done by the Birmingham Bar Association. Their town had a public-private partnership called BHAM Strong, and it was meant to assist in all different ways. But the Birmingham Bar Association carved out their own little niche where they were reviewing business interruption insurance policies. And so there was a form people would fill out on this BHAM Strong website. And so any business in town that had a insurance policy and wanted an attorney to help them understand it or go through it with them could do that really easily and free of charge. So it was a good way to not only help out the community, but have their attorneys sort of out there helping as well.
Karen, that's great. I have one last question. A lot of the ideas that you talked about had to do with communicating with members to keep them connected and engaged. Were there any particular ideas you shared that you have found to be especially effective at doing that?
I think that any of the initiatives that the bars are doing that keep people connected and talking to one another have been really well received and appreciated by their members. So a few of the examples that I shared in my presentation were the judicial town halls that were held by the Kansas City Metro Bar Association. And that's where they had their local judges come on and give updates on the court, and their membership could all listen in. There were many bars that did trivia nights, and those have been really popular. And then one of my favorites from the New Haven Bar Association was Sangria and Secrets with Drag Queens, where they made sangria. They gave each attendee a list of recipes in advance, and the drag queens that were hostessing this lesson in how to make sangria were dressed to the nines and putting on a kind of comedy show while they were doing this. So that was really cool. But I really think like I said, anything that lets people connect to one another has been really effective.
Well, Karen, that was terrific. Thank you very much. We've reached the end of the road for this episode. I want to thank Karen Korr for joining us today, and I want to thank you listeners for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please rate and leave us a review in your favorite podcasting app. We'll see you next time for another episode of On the Road with Legal Talk Network.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.